Welcome to the Time to Practice podcast. This is a space where we talk about music practice, the ups and downs that young musicians go through related to practice and learning music, and how we as parents, caregivers, and music educators can support the young musicians in our lives, support ourselves, and support each other. My name is Christine Goodner. I'm a music educator, author, and podcaster who has made it my mission to talk about music practice and to support educators and families looking to make home practice more effective and to reduce conflict and frustration in the practice room. I'm glad you're here. This episode is brought to you by my recent session about supporting students with developing attention and focus in the practice room and in music lessons. We covered frequently reported pain points by teachers, parents, and students, helpful information to know about attention and focus, some additional information about ADHD that's helpful for parents and teachers to know, and specific strategies that can help in music practice and music lessons. If you'd like access to the recorded video and the audio-only file, along with some resources that I sent out after the talk, you can find a link to purchase those on my website or in the show notes. I hope this resource supports you, and I appreciate you supporting the work of this podcast anytime you purchase one of my resources. You're listening to episode 121. Late last year, the American Suzuki Journal, which is a publication of the Suzuki Association of the Americas, put out a call for articles on the topic of optimizing or non-optimizing in the Suzuki method, especially in an era where we see a lot of things online, lots of articles that say 3 quick steps to fill in the blank or easy ways to fill in the blank. And I thought it was interesting to think about, especially because I am somebody who puts out podcast episodes or writes short articles titled 5 Ways to Do X, Y, or Z. So I did a lot of thinking about my own thoughts and feelings on this topic. And I submitted an article and was honored to have it included in the last issue of the journal, which just showed up in my mailbox this past week. After making sure I had permission to do so, I thought it would be fun to share this article in an audio format, and it would be a great way to share it more widely, encourage people to crack open their journal if they have it at home and look for this article to share with their studios or to read themselves if you're a parent or family member listening, and for teachers to share with the families that they work with. So there are multiple ways to engage with this article. Big thank you to Andy, the editor of the American Suzuki Journal. Thanks for your help polishing this up and getting it ready to go. Enjoy. I grew up in a family of both musicians and entrepreneurs. My parents met in the high school band. And not only was I a Suzuki kid from under the age of 3, but I was also the child of a musician who was an entrepreneur in the field of philanthropy. Growing up in that environment primed me to be Suzuki to my core and also to think like an optimizer with a heavy dose of generosity thrown in. It taught me to constantly search for what the experts learned the hard way, and it taught me to look for ideas that could be adopted to make the most of whatever we're trying to accomplish, music and beyond. It taught me to look for the pitfalls that others have encountered that could have been avoided if we knew they were ahead at the time. It also taught me to think about what steps can be taken in any endeavor to set us up for success. As a musician, my training and expertise taught me that learning an instrument through the Suzuki method is a long game. It's not something that can be rushed. There are not 10 steps to mastery that allow us to skip over the time, practice, and immersion needed to learn technical instruments at a high level. Learning through the Suzuki method is about more than the skills we learn on the instrument. It's experiential. It's about becoming someone, connecting with humanity, oneself, and one's community. It's wiring one's brain and centering one's life experiences, at least in part, around the pursuit of something that by its very nature cannot be rushed. That being said, there are ways to optimize one's experience or outcomes in the Suzuki method. They're just not the fast, overnight success variety. We can take steps like having a daily practice routine, listening to recordings, participating in group classes and ensembles, and supporting the individual needs of each student, to name a few. These hallmarks of our method, which may look different in practice from family to family or program to program, all work together to optimize one's experience and the impact of the Suzuki method on a student's development, both as a musician and as a human. First, let's talk about a daily practice routine. Your private teacher's assignments for the week are your roadmap for taking the next steps forward in learning. Whether that is learning something new, deepening ongoing learning, or preparing to perform successfully, you have been given a roadmap to follow to get to the next steps. A regular practice schedule will absolutely optimize your learning by allowing you to put in the time to follow those steps laid out for you in your lessons. For some families, this is a simple thing to put into their daily and weekly routine, and that may be the case for you. Other people will find it takes a while to get a practice routine going, and they have to make adjustments to their routines or get very creative to make a practice routine work for them. Within a practice day, some children may need multiple short bursts of intense practice. Others will need a lot of space around their practice because getting started takes a while and breaks are needed. For others, pressure and intensity backfire, making it hard for them to focus and learn. However it works for you, it is worth the effort to map out the week ahead, whether that is the same each week or varies wildly from week to week, and set aside time to practice each day if humanly possible. It's really the best way to go from hoping we'll make progress to actually making it happen. Next up is the topic of listening to recordings. Suzuki was ahead of his time in making the connection between learning music and learning a language. Many of us know that if we're learning a new language, immersing ourselves in the culture and surrounding ourselves with people speaking it will help us learn in leaps and bounds, rather than the rote learning we might get from other approaches to learning vocabulary and conversational phrases. One of the best ways to optimize our learning in Suzuki is to immerse ourselves, and our students specifically, in listening to our Suzuki recordings. SAA violin teacher trainer Edmund Sprunger says something along the lines of, quote, "Listening is the closest thing to magic that we have in the Suzuki method," and I couldn't agree more. We don't listen because we, quote, should, or because that's what, quote, good Suzuki families do. We listen because we are immersing our child in the music they will be learning. We want their music to come from the inside out, and playing something they're already familiar with is a much more natural process for young learners, especially as they learn to match the notes they are hearing internally with where they exist on the instrument. Some children can hear the music in the background while doing other things and still internalize it. Others need to intentionally listen to their current few pieces on repeat in order to internalize them. Some families can listen one way consistently, and that's all they need. Others need a multiple choice list in the car, while getting ready for bed, streaming on the parent's device, playing on a CD player in their room that can be chosen from each day to make it work. In some ways, accessing recordings and listening to them is more complicated and less straightforward than it was when I was a Suzuki student. I have very clear memories of gathering in my parents' bedroom to listen to my Suzuki recording on the record player. Now the recordings can seemingly be accessed in many ways, but building the habit of listening is not as straightforward. We have to be intentional in a very different way. I have heard many creative solutions families are finding to make this happen, like finding secondhand CD players and Bluetooth CD players, to making the recordings to be played on popular listening devices on the market right now, like a Tony box, to loading the MP3s on an old phone that is not activated but can still play music. You may need to be creative to come up with solutions for how and when listening will happen too. But if we want to optimize our learning based on how we learn language, listening is without a doubt one of the top ways we can optimize our results. Third, in this article, is all about social outlets for making music. In a research project I conducted with Dr. Rebecca Hansen in 2020, which we presented at both the International Symposium on Talent Education, or IRSTE, and published in the American String Teachers Journal, we asked a large group of teens and college students what motivated them to play their instrument, both now and when they were younger. The answers, friends they made through music and performing, both made the list of the top 3 factors at both stages of their development. This research reinforced what I, and likely many of you, have experienced about music. Making music with other people, being a part of something bigger than ourselves, and finding our peer group are some of the main reasons many of us loved learning and being part of musical study, both growing up and also into adulthood. Yet, the reality is that some instruments lend themselves more naturally to ensembles and group experiences than others. We have to be very creative in finding solutions for this based on our instrument, our geographic location, and our budget or time constraints. Not to mention, some students thrive in large group settings and absolutely love the huge sound made by the group, and others may find it overwhelming at first. These students will do better with a duet buddy or a smaller setting for their social time on their instrument. However it happens, having a social outlet for making music is incredibly important if we want our child to make music on their own, stay involved in music in some form into adulthood, and keep their motivation high. It's particularly vital for students to continue playing through their teen years. I recommend taking advantage of any opportunity you can. Attend group classes, join ensembles, find buddies to make music with, whether that's family members, neighbors, or groups at your place of worship. I think Dr. Karen Hendricks said it best when she wrote, "Music offers people the possibility to balance their inherent need for individual accomplishment with their inherent need for community." Finally, supporting the needs of the individual student. After teaching for over 2 decades, I have come to realize that every student who walks through my studio doors has a unique combination of what motivates them, helps them learn, the strengths they bring, and the kind of support they will need from me to thrive. Discovering what this combination is for each student is what keeps me fascinated and challenged in the best of ways in teaching after all of these years. While regular practice, listening, and social outlets for music can help each student optimize their experience, what that looks like and how that is accomplished can vary wildly across families and students. It can be frustrating to be told, quote, "This is what works," and then try it with our child and not have it work at all. This was my experience with my own children in practice. It's what got me started thinking about how to support the families and students I work with differently. I had to solve the puzzle of how to stay true to the Suzuki method while making the method work for my child and our family. So does every student and family who walks through my doors. I was one such student. This is where our belief that every child can and the Suzuki method shines. Everything we want to teach and work on with our students is a skill and can be broken down into smaller skills as needed. There are resources and experts who know how to help you with this if you're stuck. Music is a gift that each student can experience in their own way with the right support. You can help make that happen for your students or your child with the support you need if you look for it. So, putting this all together, as teachers, parents, and caregivers, we usually find out the individual needs of young musicians in our lives over time. We see what works and what doesn't, and we make adjustments. Perhaps a diagnosis is given or suspected, and support can be offered. As individual students and learners, we learn about our own strengths and needs in the same way. I encourage you to see adjusting these tactics as a learning opportunity, not as a failure. When optimizing your learning experience, consider how you can turn the dials of the principles outlined here to best meet your learning needs. Daily practice can help you optimize your results on the instrument. Regular listening to the Suzuki recordings optimizes our ability to learn our pieces. A social outlet for making music with peers is so important. And students will have learning differences with specific and individual learning support needs. Now we know. Now we can support ourselves or our students, and we can optimize for what we all need. The only misstep here is realizing something gets in the way of progress for a student, but still insisting it be done that way. There are many, many ways to practice the same technique. There are many ways to work on the same practice task. There are many strategies to work with the student in front of us. While the ideas here are not of the, quote, quick tips variety that we might read about in online posts trying to catch our attention or sell us something, they do help us optimize the Suzuki method in our fast-paced, overscheduled modern lives. In our current times, there is a tendency to try to skip or outsource the messy middle, to speed our way along to the final product if there's any way we can. As someone who loves optimizing, I get it. But as someone who has grown up in and spent my life teaching through the Suzuki method, I can't say how short-sighted this is. Of course, follow the best practices that optimize the benefits for your child. But we want to be cautious not to miss the steps along the way that help us learn to focus and learn persistence because something was not fast-paced and easy. Who we become because we practice daily, especially when it wasn't easy and we connected with other humans trying to make something exciting or beautiful, is priceless. Through a healthy Suzuki community around us, we learn we're not alone and that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. We learn the world is not always what we wish it was, but we have ways to tap into beauty and connection and our humanity and our emotions. If we optimize in ways that give us more of that, rather than bypassing it, then I think we're giving ourselves, our children, and our future a beautiful gift. I'd love to hear what you would add to my list. There could certainly be much more added to this discussion, and I was constrained here by word counts and fitting everything I wanted to say into one article. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can send them my way by connecting with me on Instagram at Suzuki Triangle or sending me an email, Christine@SuzukiTriangle.com. Before we go, I wanted to share that I am also starting to organize for my summer series, which will include shorter episodes based on practice tips submitted by listeners as much as possible, both teachers and parents alike. I would be thrilled to feature tips from you and hear what you would share about practicing with young musicians and what makes practice work for you in your home practice sessions. You can submit your tip to be shared on the podcast in writing. I'll put a Google form in the show notes of this episode where you can do so. And I will also put a link to that on my website, SuzukiTriangle.com. You can also record a voice note and email it to me so that we could hear your voice on the podcast, or reach out by email and we can schedule a short recording session together. This is a community-driven project and podcast, and our listening community would benefit from your ideas, so I would love to share them. You can go to the show notes of this episode and also the blog post on my website, SuzukiTriangle.com/episode 121, to find links to this article in written form, links to the citations from this article, and ways to get connected with me or share your practice tip in our summer series, which I'd love to have you do. On that note, I'd like to wish everyone a great week. I will look forward to being with you here again next week. Take very good care.